Let me tell you something that's going to sound completely backwards. The reason you feel so lost and unmotivated in your 30s isn't because you're failing. It's because you succeeded too well at being someone else. While everyone's telling you to try another productivity hack or find your passion, they're missing the real problem entirely. You've spent decades perfecting the art of external validation, becoming so good at making others happy that you've completely lost touch with what makes you tick. And here's the kicker that nobody talks about. Those peak years in your 20s, they weren't actually your peak at all. They were just the last hurrah of a motivational system that was never meant to sustain you long term. The uncomfortable truth is that most people hit their 30s running on psychological fumes, wondering why all the strategies that used to work suddenly feel hollow and meaningless. You might have the job, the relationship, maybe even the house, and the social media presence that suggests you've got it all figured out. But inside, there's this gnawing sense that you're living someone else's life, going through motions that feel increasingly empty. What's happening isn't a quarter-life crisis or burnout. It's your brain finally demanding that you transition from external to internal motivation. And most people have no idea how to make that shift. But here's what's going to change everything. Once you understand the real science behind identity formation and self-determination, you'll realize that feeling lost isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's finally ready to go right. The drive and passion you think you've lost forever. They're not gone. They're just waiting for you to discover who you actually are underneath all those layers of people-pleasing and external expectations. And I'm about to show you exactly how to find them again. Here's what nobody tells you about hitting your peak in your 20s. It's not actually a peak at all. It's a plateau that feels like falling off a cliff. You know that feeling when you're cruising through life, checking all the boxes, getting decent grades, landing that first real job, and then suddenly, nothing. It's like someone switched off your internal engine while you weren't looking. The drive and passion that used to fuel your late-night study sessions and ambitious weekend projects just vanished into thin air, leaving you wondering if you've already seen your best days. The thing is, when people talk about burnout, they usually picture someone working 80-hour weeks or juggling 3 jobs. But there's this sneaky type of exhaustion that creeps up on high achievers who've been running on external validation their whole lives. You might have been the kid who always got A's, the college student who landed great internships, or the young professional who seemed to have it all figured out. Then suddenly in your late 20s or early 30s, that external motivation system starts breaking down like an old car that's been running on fumes. What's really frustrating is that everyone around you seems to have the magic formula figured out. Your social media feeds are full of productivity hacks, morning routines, and life optimization strategies that promise to reignite your inner fire. You've probably tried a bunch of them. The 5 a.m. wake-up calls, the meditation apps, the bullet journaling, maybe even those expensive supplements that claim to boost mental clarity. But here's the kicker. None of these surface-level fixes address the real issue brewing underneath, and that's exactly what we need to dive into next. Let's take a step back and look at how our brains are actually wired to find motivation. Because understanding this is like having the blueprint to your own psychological operating system. When we're kids, our entire motivational framework revolves around making others happy. And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. Think about it. A 5-year-old doesn't wake up thinking, I need to find my authentic self today. Instead, they're focused on getting that smile from mom when they share their toys or earning praise from their teacher for sitting still during story time. This external motivation system is actually a brilliant evolutionary design that helps us learn social rules and develop basic life skills. As we hit our teenage years, something interesting starts happening. We begin developing what psychologists call identity formation. But let's be real, teenagers don't actually know who they are yet. They think they do, which is why you'll see a 16-year-old dramatically declare they're going to be a rock star one week and a marine biologist the next. This phase is all about trying on different personas, like clothes in a dressing room, seeing what fits and what gets the right kind of attention. The external validation system is still running the show, but now it's coming from peers instead of just parents and teachers. Then comes the early 20s, the golden age of external motivation disguised as independence. You're grinding through college, chasing those GPAs, landing internships, and climbing the first rungs of the career ladder. It feels like you're self-directed, but really, you're still operating within a system where someone else sets the rules and rewards. The structure is crystal clear. Study hard, get good grades, land a good job. Climb the corporate ladder, rinse and repeat. But here's where things get tricky. As your brain fully develops and you hit your late 20s, this external motivation system starts feeling ... empty. And that's when the real journey toward internal motivation has to begin, whether you're ready for it or not. There's a particular type of suffering that's become epidemic among people in their late 20s and early 30s, what researchers call a noiseless crisis. From the outside, these folks look like they've got their act together. Decent job, stable relationship, maybe a nice apartment, and a social media presence that suggests everything's peachy. But inside, it's like living in a house where all the furniture belongs to someone else. They've become so good at making others happy that they've completely lost touch with what makes them tick. And the scariest part is that nobody around them even notices. Picture someone who introduces themselves by their relationships rather than their own qualities. I'm Sarah's husband. I'm the one everyone calls when they need help, or I'm the responsible one in my family. These people have essentially outsourced their identity to the roles they play for others. And while that might sound noble, it's actually a recipe for feeling completely out of control. They're like actors who've been playing the same character for so long that they've forgotten who they were before the performance started. The external validation they receive for being helpful or reliable becomes their only source of self-worth, creating a vicious cycle of people-pleasing. What makes this crisis particularly brutal is the silent desperation that comes with it. These aren't people who are obviously struggling. They're not failing at work. Their relationships aren't falling apart, and they're not making any dramatic life changes that would signal distress. Instead, they're quietly drowning while everyone around them thinks they're swimming just fine. They wake up each day feeling like they're living someone else's life, going through motions that feel increasingly meaningless, all while maintaining the facade that everything's perfectly normal. And this disconnect between their outer success and inner emptiness is exactly what leads to the deeper question of identity and purpose. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Most people have the relationship between identity and purpose completely backwards. They think that once they figure out their purpose in life, they'll magically know who they are. Like purpose is this external thing they need to discover, similar to finding a hidden treasure. But here's the plot twist that changes everything. You can't find your purpose until you know who you are first. It's like trying to choose the perfect outfit without knowing your own style, size, or even what occasion you're dressing for. Without a solid sense of self, you're basically shooting arrows in the dark, hoping one of them hits a target you can't even see. Think about it this way. Purpose isn't some mystical calling that descends from the heavens with a booming voice telling you exactly what to do with your life. Instead, it's the natural result of connecting your authentic self with the world around you. When someone says, "I want to help people," that's not really a purpose. That's just a vague direction. But when someone who's deeply connected to their own experiences with mental health struggles decides to become a therapist, or when someone who's passionate about environmental justice starts an eco-friendly business, that's purpose born from identity. The magic happens in that intersection between who you genuinely are and what the world needs. This is why so many people find themselves constantly changing directions, jumping from one passion project to another, or feeling like they're always searching for the thing that'll finally make them feel fulfilled. Without a clear sense of identity, every new opportunity looks equally appealing and equally meaningless. You might spend 6 months getting really into photography, then suddenly pivot to learning coding, then decide you want to start a podcast, not because you're naturally curious, but because you're desperately trying to find something that resonates with the self you haven't fully discovered yet. And this pattern of endless searching actually points to something much deeper about how identity formation really works. Let's dive into what psychologists have discovered about how we actually form our identities. And trust me, this isn't some abstract theory that only matters in textbooks. These stages explain why some people seem to have their lives figured out, while others feel like they're constantly spinning their wheels. The first stage is called foreclosure, and is probably the most common trap for high achievers who peaked in their 20s. This happens when you make major life commitments without actually exploring your options, like choosing a career path because your parents suggested it, or staying in your hometown because it's what's expected. It feels safe and responsible, but it's actually a shortcut that skips the crucial step of figuring out what you actually want. Foreclosure works great when your brain is still wired for external motivation, which is why so many people can cruise through their early 20s feeling pretty good about their choices. You're getting positive feedback from family, friends, and society for following the right path, so everything seems to be working perfectly. But here's the catch. As your brain develops and you start needing more internal motivation, that borrowed sense of direction starts feeling hollow. You might find yourself thinking, I should be grateful for this job, or I should be happy with this relationship. But that word should is a dead giveaway that you're operating from someone else's blueprint rather than your own. The opposite extreme is called moratorium, where people get stuck in endless exploration mode without ever committing to anything. These are the folks who've been figuring themselves out for years, constantly researching new career paths, moving to different cities, or jumping between relationships because they're terrified of making the wrong choice. They're so afraid of limiting their options that they end up paralyzed by possibility, the sweet spot. What researchers call achievement happens when you do plenty of exploration and then make intentional commitments based on what you've learned about yourself. But getting there requires understanding something even more fundamental about how our minds actually work. Here's where things get really interesting. Scientists have actually figured out the exact ingredients your brain needs to develop a strong sense of identity, and it's not what most people think. The first pillar is autonomy, which sounds simple but is actually revolutionary when you understand it correctly. Autonomy isn't about being independent or rebellious. It's about self-directed action. This means picking something, literally anything, that you decide to do and then actually doing it. The crazy part? It doesn't matter what you choose. You could decide to read a book, learn to juggle, or start a garden. The magic isn't in the activity itself. It's in the fact that you made the choice and followed through. Most people who've peaked in their 20s get tripped up here because they're still thinking in terms of right and wrong choices, which is leftover programming from their external motivation days. They'll ask questions like, but what if I pick the wrong thing? Or how do I know this will lead somewhere meaningful? But autonomy doesn't work that way. It's not about optimization or making the perfect choice. It's about strengthening the I muscle in your brain. Every time you make a decision and follow through, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways to recognize yourself as the author of your own life, rather than just a character in someone else's story. The second pillar is competence, and this one's probably the most misunderstood concept in personal development. Competence doesn't mean being good at something. It means stretching your capabilities and hopefully succeeding. Think of it like this. If you normally work out for 30 minutes, try pushing yourself to 45 minutes. If you usually read fiction, challenge yourself to write a short story. The goal isn't to become the world's best at anything. It's to discover your own limits and boundaries. Because here's the thing, you can't know who you are until you know what you're capable of. And you can't know what you're capable of until you push yourself beyond your comfort zone. And that brings us to the third pillar, which might be the trickiest one of all in our digital age. If you've recognized yourself in the foreclosure pattern, where you've committed to a path without really exploring your options, here's what you need to hear. Going back to explore doesn't mean throwing your life away. I know that voice in your head is probably screaming about wasted time, sunk costs, and starting over from scratch. But here's the thing that'll change your perspective. That fear of wasting your previous investments is exactly the same thinking that got you stuck in the first place. You're so focused on optimizing what you've already built that you're missing the chance to build something that actually fits who you are. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something good to find something great. The exploration process doesn't have to be dramatic or life-altering. You don't need to quit your job and backpack through Europe though. Hey, if that calls to you, go for it. Start small and strategic. Take that pottery class you've been curious about. Volunteer for a cause that genuinely interests you. Or have coffee with people in fields that intrigue you. The key is to approach these experiences with genuine curiosity rather than the pressure to find the answer. You're not looking for your life's calling in every new experience. You're collecting data about what resonates with your authentic self versus what you think should resonate with you. For those stuck in moratorium, the endless exploration trap. Your challenge is the opposite but equally important. You need to practice the art of commitment even when you don't have perfect information. Pick something that feels 70% right and commit to it for a specific time frame, maybe 6 months or a year. The goal isn't to find the perfect path. It's to develop your commitment muscles and learn how to make decisions with incomplete information. Remember, you can always course correct later, but you can't steer a ship that's not moving. And speaking of movement, there's something about our modern world that's making all of this much harder than it used to be. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Our digital world has made the third pillar of identity formation, relatedness, incredibly difficult to achieve. Think about it. When's the last time you had a deep, meaningful conversation with someone who really saw and appreciated the real you? Not your Instagram persona, not your LinkedIn professional brand, not the version of yourself you present in group chats, but the actual, unfiltered you with all your quirks, doubts, and genuine interests. The problem isn't just that we're spending more time online. It's that we're getting really good at curating versions of ourselves that get likes and validation, while our authentic selves are starving for real connection. Dating apps, Discord servers, and even professional networking have turned human connection into a kind of performance art where everyone's trying to present their best angle. You swipe through potential partners based on carefully selected photos and witty one-liners. You join online communities where you can reinvent yourself completely, and you build professional relationships through polished posts and strategic comments. It's like we're all walking around wearing masks at a masquerade ball, wondering why we feel so lonely even when we're constantly connected to hundreds of people. The feedback we get from these digital interactions isn't really about who we are. It's about how well we've learned to play the algorithm game. What's even more concerning is how this digital masking is creating what researchers call empty personalities. People who are collections of interests and traits rather than coherent, whole human beings. You might be into fitness, travel, and true crime podcasts, but those aren't really personality traits. They're just consumption preferences. Without real face-to-face relationships where people can see your reactions, your body language, your genuine responses to unexpected situations, you never get the kind of authentic feedback that helps solidify your sense of self. And this brings us to a crucial realization about what it really takes to rediscover who you are. Here's something that might sound counterintuitive. Sometimes finding yourself requires abandoning things that are objectively good. This isn't about making reckless decisions or burning bridges for the sake of drama. It's about recognizing that good enough can be the enemy of authentically yours. Think about someone who has a stable, well-paying job that their family is proud of, but every Monday morning feels like a small death. Or consider the person in a relationship with someone who's kind, reliable, and checks all the boxes on paper, but there's no real spark or deep connection. These aren't bad situations, but they might not be the right situations for who you're becoming. The process of rediscovery often looks messy from the outside because it involves making decisions that don't make sense to people who are still operating from external validation systems. When Dr. K left his path as a monk to become a doctor and then left traditional medicine to start Healthy Gamer, each transition probably looked crazy to people around him. But here's what's fascinating. Each step wasn't a rejection of his previous path. It was an integration of what he'd learned about himself into something more aligned with his authentic self. The monk experience taught him about mental discipline. Medical school gave him scientific credibility, and combining them created something entirely new. What makes this process so challenging is that it requires you to trust your internal compass, even when everyone around you is questioning your navigation skills. You might find yourself saying things like, "I know this doesn't make sense, but it feels right," or "I can't explain why, but I need to try this." That's not being impulsive or irresponsible. That's your authentic self, finally getting loud enough to be heard over the noise of external expectations. The key is learning to distinguish between genuine intuition and fear-based reactions. And that's where everything we've discussed starts coming together into a clear path forward. Here's the truth that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. There's no magic supplement, productivity hack, or morning routine that's going to solve the deep identity crisis that's been brewing in your life. You can optimize your sleep, track your habits, and follow every guru's advice. But if you don't know who you are at your core, you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The answer isn't out there in some new system or strategy. It's inside you, waiting to be discovered through the hard work of exploration and commitment. This isn't about finding your passion. It's about finding yourself, and then letting that authentic self guide you toward what actually matters. The journey from external to internal motivation isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a skill you develop over time. Every choice you make based on your own values rather than others, expectation strengthens your autonomy muscle. Every time you push yourself beyond your comfort zone and discover what you're capable of, you build competence. And every genuine connection you make, where someone sees and appreciates the real you, adds another layer to your sense of relatedness. These aren't abstract concepts. They're practical tools for rebuilding your life from the inside out. So here's your challenge. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, or the complete roadmap before you start taking action. Pick one small thing that genuinely interests you. Not because it'll look good on your resume or impress your friends, but because it sparks something inside you. Commit to it for a specific period of time. Push yourself to get better at it, and find at least one person who can witness your authentic engagement with this pursuit. It might seem simple, but this is exactly how people transition from feeling lost and unmotivated to building lives that actually reflect who they are. And once you understand this process, you'll realize that the best years of your life aren't behind you. They're just getting started. If this content made you rethink your trajectory and better understand why you feel lost in your 30s, leave a comment telling me which part resonated most with you. Was it the discovery about external versus internal motivation? The realization about the silent identity crisis? Or maybe the practical strategies for rediscovering who you really are? Your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in this journey. And if you know someone who's going through this phase of questioning and lack of direction, that friend who seems to have it all together but always complains that something's missing, or the family member who's changed careers 3 times in the past few years, share this video with them. Sometimes understanding that what we're experiencing has a name and a solution is already half the path to transformation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because we're going to continue exploring themes like this: science-based personal development, strategies for building an authentic life, and how to navigate the complexities of modern adult life. Your journey of self-discovery is just beginning, and I want to be here to support every step of the way. See you in the next video.